Yeah. Hi, morning. Morning, everyone. Can you hear us? If you just confirm, by raising a hand that you can hear us, or through the chat room, yes. Good morning, Fatima. Can you hear Danny or Daniel? Yes, you can. Okay, thanks for confirming, Fatima. Can I ask Abby to confirm if you're able to hear Daniel?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
But you're able to hear Daniel as well?
No, we can't hear Mr. Daniel.
We can just hear Mr. Daniel.
Yeah.
All right, okay, give me 1 second. I'll sort this out 1 second.
No, good. Good morning, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes.
That's right. All right, guys. Hope you guys are doing well. Good morning.
Morning, guys. Just looking at introducing Daniel today. He's the new lecturer who's going to be teaching health and social care, and he's going to be looking at teaching this particular unit. So just want him to get introduced, and want to make sure that you're able to hear him okay. And obviously he'll start off with a brief introduction, and then the session will start. So I've got Abby, Ashu, Fatma. I think Grace has dropped off. I will try and get her back in. But in the meanwhile, if you crack on with some introductions and obviously get to know Daniel. If you have any issues or any queries, if you're not able to hear him, please drop a quick message on the WhatsApp group and on the chat here. And that would essentially, give him the clue. But I think he's pretty much live and now okay.
All right. Good morning, guys. Hope you guys are doing well. Good. My name is Daniel. A bit of introduction, and I'm a healthcare practitioner and a lecturer as well. Can I have some bit of introductions from each of you? Can we start with Abibola's Falade?
Yes.
Good. How are you?
Morning, everybody. I'm Abimbola Falade.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. What's your background, please?
Sorry?
What's your background?
Oh, well, I'm from Nigeria. I'm here in UK,
Okay.
working with the care sector.
Okay, that's good.
So,
That's good. Good. And what do you aim to achieve? I mean, with these qualifications?
well, I want to, if I can be able to go into nursing, that's what I have in mind.
That's fine.
And
That's
also to be able to work with the NHS.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's good to know. I'm so proud of you. Okay. Could we have Ashu? Ashu, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your background, please? What you do now?
Good morning, everybody. I am Achu. I am from India.
Okay.
Now I am staying in India.
Okay.
I just preparing my IELTS now.
Amazing. So what do you do? What's your profession?
I was chef now.
Okay. That's good.
Now I am changing to my profession to healthcare.
Healthcare. Amazing. You've taken the right decision. Okay, you've taken the right decision. So that's good to know. Could we have is it Farmer? Fatima, yeah. Fatima, could you unmute yourself? Yeah, please.
Hi,
Hi.
my name is Fatima Kaur. I'm Pakistani and I'm living in UK.
Amazing. Fatima, what's your profession? What do you do now?
Nothing, I'm just studying at the moment.
Oh, you just
I
study.
want to have a cess in uni, so I'm doing level 3 of health and social care.
Amazing. So are you new in healthcare? You've not done healthcare at all before, have you?
No, I'm not.
You know, amazing. Good. So you want to be a nurse, are you?
Yeah.
Amazing. Good to know. All right, guys, let's crack on then. So my name is, by introduction, my name is Danny Mensah. I've been a healthcare professional for over 10 years and a lecturer as well. And I feel that there's quite involving framework within the health and social sector. And it's quite important that practitioners or learners who seek to advance more in their knowledge and becoming nurses get themselves abreast with the new framework, especially with the new introduction of skilled workers from abroad, the Home Office and the CQCs and the healthcare regulators are trying to put in new practices to make sure that people will have the best practices going forward, and then they will not do things that will go contrary to what the policies say. So it's good that you guys are learning this on level 3, and I think that you do well when you have completed your course and seek to achieve your aims and objectives. I mean, what we seek to do with this learning outcomes of this lecture is to, first of all, look into understanding the organizational structure within the health and social care sector. You'd need to understand that the health and social sector has components and has comprises of different structures and organization, and therefore learners or students who seek to advance their knowledge in this sector or want to be healthcare professionals should know some of these things at least. And also it will help you in your learning outcomes in terms of your assignments and assignment brief. Once you have understood these things, it also better informs you to ensure that you can answer your questions very well and do better as well. So we'll start off by saying that it's the right thing to do in terms of your learning outcomes and achieving this aim as well. The aim of this is for us to develop some kind of structure and within the health and sector, and also understand the best practices within this health and social organization. And when we say best practices, we're looking at governmental policies and regulations and looking at the processes and how healthcare professionals, whether nurses or whether any other social workers, would comply with the governmental laws. And for that matter, we're talking about UK and no other country. So our focus is on the UK. So everything we're talking about in here today will be subject on the UK and policies and UK framework and not any other country. It is important that we understand these things going forward. So we have to understand the structure of the health and social care, its legislations, and the framework, or better with the best practices involved in these lectures. It's very key that we take notice of some of these things as well. Having said that, if you're asked to probably explain the overall structure of the health and social care sector, you know, when we say that, what is your understanding when we say that over the overall structure within the health and social care sector, what we need? So one of the key things that comes to mind when we're talking about the health and social care sector is which governing organization or which companies seeks or which governmental department seeks to ensure that the health care are practiced in the best way or in the best format that will comply to government policies. And one of the main organizations that comes to mind is the Department of Health. You know, the Department of Health is an organization that seeks to ensure that people or policies are met in the right way. So that's one of the things that we have to look into. The Department of Health ensures that we do things in the right way and we do things in the right format. And a typical example with this organization, when we talk Department of Health, we're talking about the components or the organization that comes under Department of Health. We need to note some of these things when it comes to, and its role is to ensure that ensure the provision of appropriate health and social care services, both in clinical settings, such as hospitals, GP surgeries in the community through nursing, social work, and other professional services. So the what we call the DiHSC, they are responsible for implementing government policies in England. However, it delegates this to the NHS England. So if you look at the screen, you realize that beneath the Department of Health, we have the NHS England, and then we have the NHS Improvement and all that. But the top organizations is the Department of Health. So they implement policies in England and also make sure that everything that is done conforms to the best practices within the UK. And they delegate this to the NHS England, which also have a role that they play in achieving some of these things. So if you look at it, it talks about a health skill better lifelong. So with what they do and what they seek to do, once they'll be able to implement policies in England that governs the health and social care sector. In other words, what you're going to gain is that practitioners or providers or service users, they tend to have better life by the policies that they put in there. They also ensure that government regulators conform to the health and social care practices. And the Secretary of State is more of the ultimate responsible person in terms of this Department of Health, is the main person in charge of making sure that the responsibility of those needs of patients and public sectors do conform to governmental policies that have been made available. Do we have any question to ask? Does anybody have any question to ask? Can we proceed? Somebody joining us. Any question?
No.
No, at all. Okay. Who has just joined us? Okay. All right. So, like I did mention, the ultimate purpose of the Department of Health is to implement governmental policy within the health and social care. And I said that they work in collaboration with other agencies. There's about 24 agencies that the Department of Health works for, or works in partnership. Let me put it that way, a better way. They work in partnership with some of these organizations, but they delegate the authority or their power to the NHS England. And therefore, if you look at the structure in your diagram, you realize that beneath it, they are on top, the Department of Health, but then below it, we have the NHS England and other the local authorities, the clinical commission group, and all of that. We have all those things under there. But the key thing you need to note is that they are the responsible organization that implements policies within the health and social care sector. All right. Okay. I did mention that whilst what they do seek to key components, what they do seek to ensure that they give a better life to practitioners. They shape and provide funding available to help ensure that there's dignity and respect within the health and social sector. And what they also seek to do is that they seek to make sure that governmental policies or budgets that is given yearly comply and are shared, accordingly to agencies that require of them. And the Secretary of State is the ultimate responsible person for this Department of Health. So we'll proceed again. Now, if you look at the overview of the health and social care structures in what we call the health and social care at 2012, I would say that the ulterior motive of the health and social care Act 2012, there should be a reason why this act came into place. And I mean, before the Act 2012, we had the Act 2028. And the health and social care Act 2028 wasn't the best. There was a lot of shortfalls within the health and social care Act 2028. And therefore, it was important, imperative that there is a revision to that. And one of the reasons that led to the Health and Social Care Act 2012, for there were pressures within the NHS and they were not keeping up with healthcare systems across the world. The demand was growing rapidly as population growth and lung conditions became more common. And therefore, it was important that medicines were even costing almost about 600 million per year. So these are the things that led to a new regulation, a new revision. It was important. The second point was that the NHS was not meeting up with other facilities that they need to have, you know, and there need to be improvements. And then the third one is that the government could not protect the NHS budget. And this is among the highest funding settlements in the NHS. Simply doing this, there was so deep, so they were high demand. There were state of public funds were not available, and they needed improvement, and therefore they need to improve on and revise the Health and Social Care Act 2018 to Act 20. Now, what one may ask, what does it seek to achieve? You know, and the key thing is that the basic aim of the act is to change how NHS care is commissioned through the greater involvement of clinicians and new NHS. Yeah. So, like I said, previously in the 2028 Act, we used to have non-clinical professional dealing with it, but currently the Act 2028 gives you a better spectrum where clinicians can take off. So one of the things that the Act puts clinicians in charge of shaping services, enabling the NHS funding to be spent more effectively. In 2028, it wasn't like that, you know. Yes, previously clinicians in many areas were frustrated by negotiating with primary care trusts to get the right services for their patients. Supported by the NHS Commission Board, new clinical commissions groups will now directly commission service. So what it means that in the past, in the Act 2028, it wasn't like that. But the new provisions gives commissions to be able to do that and also negotiate a better. Also, the Act 2012, it provides regulation to support innovative services. You know, the Act gives a fair playing field, you know, that enables needs to be met, including charity and independent sector providers, as long as they meet the NHS costs and providers. So these are some of the interventions that the Act 2012 seek to do. You know, it also gives greater voice for patients. You know, the Act establish new healthcare watch patient organizations, both locally and nationally, to drive patient involvement, which is key. What we call person-centered care. It is very key that patients are more involved in the Act. It wasn't so in the Act 2028. So the new inventions has made a lot of room to be able to achieve many things. And then if you talk about it, it also gives a new focus on public health. The Act provides the underpinnings for Public Health England, a new body to drive improvement in the public health. You know, so the Act 2012, right? So if you look at the organogram, it talks about, oh, you have the public health, the NHS, the adult social care, and all that, you know. And so it also gives a greater accountability. So if you are asked about the Act 2012, what they seek to do, the key components, it gives greater accountability locally and nationally. The Act sets out clear roles and responsibilities, whilst keeping ministers' ultimate responsibility for the NHS. So what it means is, like I did mention, that the Secretary of State with the Department of Health is the sole responsible person, but within that we have ministers, people who are responsible for different functions. So the Act put them on their toes to ensure that they implement what is required of them within the NHS, you know. And it also removes unnecessary ties of management, releasing resources to the front line. It replaces the NICE. So what it means that there was so much about bureaucracies within the healthcare sector, and therefore this new Act takes out this unnecessary bureaucracies, unnecessary frontiers within the Act. Okay. So if we proceed, I've summarized all this in this one. So it talks about all these local authorities. It wasn't so. It wasn't so. There was no collaboration. There wasn't any effective collaboration then within the council and the social care sector or the healthcare sector. There wasn't so. But now fundings are made available, and the Department of Health regulates down to the local councils, so that you can see there's transparency, there's uniformity. When there are issues, there's a quick involvement within the patient and within the government sector. So it helps in patient involvement, it helps in patient improvement, it helps in the needs of patients. And when it used to be in the past, it used to be quite elongated and it was quite frustrating then. So the Act 2028 wasn't the best. Hence why they have to introduce the Act 2012. You understand? Now, I think that how does it work? The Act 2012, how does it work? You know, so the patients and public sector, how does it work? The local authorities have stronger role. In so doing, they've empowered the local, what we call the councils. You know, they've had a much stronger role in shaping services and will take responsibilities for local population health improvement, you know. And it also gives the new health and well-being boss will bring about together local commissioners and health and social care elected representatives. And so it helps the boss, what we call, you know, the councils have different boss or commissioning boss. It gives them a bit more better representation in terms of their decision making. You know, even with the NHS as well, by the care will be commissioned by the clinical commission groups, which give GPs and other clinicians responsibility for using resources to secure high quality services as well. You know, it also helps to monitor temporary to restrain oversight foundation trusts like the NHS Trust Development Authority, which is all mentioned in here in the outcome. It talks about the commission groups. It talks about the Health Educational England, which provides oversight and leadership for professional education and training. You know, it talks about the National Institute of Health and Care Excellence will continue to provide independent advice and guidance to NHS and will extend its role to social care. It wasn't so before, but now they have been empowered to extend their responsibility to social care as well. You know, and even the Department of Health will still be ultimately accountable for the NHS. Instead of directly managing providers of commissioners, ministers will transparently set objectives for the NHS through a mandate to the NHS Commissioning Board. You know, yes. So these are the important things to note. You know, the NHS provides no longer performance managed by strategic health authorities. There will be consistent system of regulation for providers. The Care Quality Commission will ensure services meet safety and quality. So these are all the care quality. These are all falls. They all fall under the new 2012, and they have been given their parameters and ways to function within that. And it's important that students will know some of these things and what the 2012 seek to do, which overrides the 2028, which was not much sufficient or wasn't too good, the best way to deal with healthcare or to deal with health and social care activities as well. So we have to know this as well. Yeah. Now, the NHS Commissions Board will be supported by the new body called the NHS Commissioning Board. The board will authorize clinical commissioning groups, allocate resources, and commission certain services such as primary care. It will host clinical networks to advise on single areas of care and clinical senates, providing clinical advice on commissioners. So these are some of the things that we need to note. It wasn't there with the previous what do you call commission? Yeah. So it will also monitor, key thing, it will also monitor temporal or also retain oversight foundation trust, while the NHS Trust Development, that I just mentioned, that will help maintain the NHS Trust achieve foundation status. You know, the Healthcare Education England, not in the Act, will provide oversight and leadership professionals, which I've mentioned already. So it is important that we take care of some of these things. And the National Institute of Healthcare and Excellence will continue to provide independent advice, which I've mentioned, you know, independent advice to the NHS and will extend its role to social care. So not only will they give advice, but they're also going to extend their role to social care. Very important. Then I didn't mention that the ministers in the Department of Health, which the Secretary of State is the one in charge, will be ultimately accountable for the NHS. So I did mention they are accountable to the NHS. Instead of directly managing providers and commissions as it used to be in the Act 2028, ministers will transparently set objectives for the NHS through a mandate to the NHS Commissioning Board. It will hold to account all of the national bodies with powers to intervene in event of significant failure or an emergency. action to protect and promote the health of population will be led nationally by a new public health service, the Public Health England. And agency also, it talks about the Public Health England as well, all within this framework in the Act 2012. So we need to take note of this, that these are all interventions that, or new introductions and provisions that the Act 2012 came to seek to do. And it moves us from a place of where the governmental wings were only concentrating on only the funding available, but to move into an area where social care is handled in a way that it's more transparent and there's nothing to be hidden about. And the local authorities were brought in to get more involved in making. All right, thank you. Do you have any question to ask? Any question? Okay. So when we have to look into the role of healthcare regulators and watchdogs. Now, Abimola, you are healthcare. What do you understand when we say regulators or regulation? What's your understanding?
Regulation, maybe I can say all the things put together for proper care to be done for the service users. The regulations, the things put together, the regulations put together, the plans put together.
Okay.
For proper care.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. And Grace, have you just joined us?
Yes, please.
Good. Okay, so Grace, we are on point 2, the role of healthcare regulators and watchdogs. I hope you are on track.
Please come again. I'm at work, so I'm hiding.
You're at work. Okay, that's fine. All right then.
Well, I can still talk if you want to ask any question, because
So
I'm hiding.
also, are you a healthcare as well?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I was just asking, what's your understanding when we talk about regulations within the healthcare?
I think it's the measures putting in place at the workplace.
That's fine.
Or the work plan.
On the work plan. That's fine. Anshu, what's your understanding? Anshu, are you there? Okay. So I think you have fair understanding. So it's quite important that we understand how serious regulations are within the healthcare sector. I mean, for many of you who are healthcare practitioners, you realize that in your various care homes and even hospitals, there are a lot of healthcare policies that have been laid in there and regulations that we have to follow. So regulation in healthcare is a major thing, and it's in there to protect, first of all, the service user that we work for, or the patient that we work for, or we're going to work to take care of, and also protect ourselves as well as individuals who are practitioners as well, and also to protect the public in general. So it is important that we take control or we take notice of the regulations when it comes to healthcare. But one may ask, why is it so important? It is important because when you don't comply with some of these things, it can lead to you being banned or barred from your practice. I mean, if you're a nurse or you are a healthcare professional, you can be reported to the regulatory organization, which can be probably a DBS that regulates safeguarding policies and all that against healthcare and nurses. And when I say DBS, I'm talking about the Department of Barring Services that regulates all healthcare before they can work as carers or as nurses. So if you do anything or you don't follow any regulation, it would impact you when you are reported, going contrary. And that is why it's there to, first of all, protect us from health risk, both yourself and the patients that you are in to take off, or what you call safeguarding, safeguarding risk, So, and then also the public itself in general, you know, so you are there to protect yourself and the public in general. And that is why it's important that regulations. So for those of you who are healthcarers, I'm sure that in your care homes and all that, you may have so many things that you do within your work, and anything that you do, you document it and you write it down. There are regulations that you have to follow. You know, you have care plans, you have risk assessments, you have things that you have to do and things not to do. So these are all for these things, these processes or policies that you have to follow in regulation of healthcare. And it's very, very important. When it comes to healthcare, regulations are very key in healthcare, and we have to be very keen about that. Now, it also goes further to encapsulate, to talk about what these regulations seek to do and what some of them are, you know. And if you're a healthcarer, you will know that even though DBS is not part of the regulators in terms of the core regulators, but anybody who is a carer will know that before you can work as a carer, you ought to have you cleared from your DBS in the UK. You ought to have cleared. And apart from the carer, you have to be practiced and done the care training, and also have had your DBS cleared, where there's nothing negative about you. So the police will clear you off of no bad. The safeguarding adult and children will clear you of not having any bad record, and so on and so forth. And you are not the police national computer system of any wrongdoings. So these are all part of regulations that an healthcare would have to meet up in becoming a carer. And these are all regulations. But then there are also regulators that regulate. There are government departments and agencies that have been appointed or assigned to check some of these things. And one of it, which comes to mind when you talk to the healthcare, is CQC. Now, which is also called the Care Quality Commission, established in 2029. It is very important that we know this. Now, for many of you might be carers, you might necessarily not come across CQC because probably you are not into managerial role. But of those of you who are managers or care managers or deputy managers, you'd always encounter CQC staffs coming to your organization, coming to your company setup. And if you are a carer, normally we hear your managers telling you, you need to put things in order. CQC is coming for inspection, and anytime CQC is coming to your setup, whether a care home, whether a regulated, whether a supported living facility, or whether an hospital, you realize that your managers or the top executives, they always need to make sure that you have put in everything, and that is why regulation becomes very key. You have to make sure you are doing the right thing. Anything you do, you are documenting it. It must meet CQC standards. You know, if it doesn't meet the CQC standards, the CQC have the right to recommend your setup being closed down, and they have to investigate. So the CQC play a major role, and this is very key. And if you look at some of their components, they are responsible for registration. And when we talk about registration, the CQC is the only organization that, if you want to set up a care company or care agency or supported living facility, anything within the healthcare industry, which is regulated, the word is regulated, the CQC is the only organization that have to approve of you or give you the license. So you need to be approved from the CQC, and they have their registration processes. You ought to be a level 5 holder within the health and social care sector, and you need to have a DBS, DBS for managers. You know, a special DBS that the CQC would have to ensure that you do it. Having gone through all this and cleared you on, then you need to have your policies. You know, so the CQC ensures your policy. You have to have your policies available. Your policies for your infection control policies, health and social care policies for your organization, what you seek to do, all these things, whistleblowers policies. All these policies have to be in place before the CQC will approve of you to be a care home or a supported living facility, you know. And they also ensure that you have the requisite qualification. And that's why I mentioned that we have what we call registered managers. So in the registration, they have to be a registered manager who ought to have at least a level 5 health and social care leadership and management. Once they have that, then they meet up the CQC regulation and the qualifications. And then they'll come. And so having checked all these documents and having checked all this paperwork, they will then have to delegate. By the new law in 2023, there used to be 1 month notice, but now the new law, they will give you 2 to 3 months notice. So CQC will give you 2 to 3 month notice. And when they give you this notice, they will come and inspect. And when they come there and inspect and they are okay, that is the only reason why they will approve of you to start doing what you have to do as a legal organization who can give your facility out for service users, for carers to be working there, and also to ensure that you can accept people in your care home, or if it's a supported living facility or any other organization that does healthcare, the CQC have to approve you. You need to approve of you for you to be able to do all these things. So when you talk about registration, that's what it seeks to do. And in terms of regulation, the regulation is that they set up the Care Commission Act 2029 to make sure that carers and providers meet up this regulation. Example is what I've given to you, that you have to meet up their regulations and they have to come there and ensure that all your company policies and all your company provisions that you have meet up their standard. That's only why CQC will get you approved. And when they approve you, they can either approve you or decline. Now, in recent times, the CQC have come out with a 4-point scoring system, which can either be outstanding, good, or that's 4, 3, 2, and 1. Good, 2, very bad, and the last one, they decline. So when they come to you, CQC would have to ensure that whether your setup or your care home where you work meets up their standards. And one of their standards is that when you are exceptional, then they'll give you outstanding. So many of you would have seen on the internet, some of the companies, you see that CQC approved outstanding. You might see things like CQC approved good. You might see like CQC approved, but it needs more improvements. These are things that you normally see probably where you work, or when you check on the company website, many companies, they have it there displayed, you know. So these are the things. So they regulate, inspect, and give ratings for all providers. And I've just informed you that the new ratings is 4, 3, 2, and 1. 4 is the highest, 3 is the next, the good one. The second one, 2 is fairly good, and then the below one is needs improvements. So these are things that so that's what the CQC does. Yeah, that's what they do, you know. Yes. And then if you continue, you realize that the regulators is not only CQC, but CQC is more of the huge organization that does a lot, you know. We also have, which is not captured here, there's one I'm going to add to it. We also have the General Chiropractic Council. They seek to regulate professionals within that sector. The chiropractics, you know what they do, yes. So these are professional independent organizations that regulates that we need to know them, you know. We know about the General Dental Council. They regulate dentists and dental therapists, dental nurses, name them, dental doctors, or all those orthodontic therapists, they all fall under the General Dental Council, you know, yes. Then we have the General Medical Council, I'm sure many of you know, because same elsewhere, you know, that regulates doctors. It's very important. So what it means is that the General Medical Council, if a doctor works somewhere and he does something which raises safeguarding concerns, the organization where they went to work, they can refer the doctor to the General Medical Council. And the General Medical Council have the right to ban the doctor. They can ban the doctor from practice, you know, because the General Medical Council seeks to ensure that doctors who are working have best practices and meet fit for purpose. So if a professional who is a doctor or a nurse goes to work somewhere and they do anything that raises eyebrows or concerns for the organization where they've gone to work, they have the right to refer the doctor and to be investigated. And when it's investigated and they find something probable, then the doctor can be banned. So this is what regulators do. Regulators regulate, and they also have the right to ban you because you belong to their council. I want to make some points. Okay. And then when you get to the General Optical Council, obviously we know the opticals, what they do. You know, the opticians, you know what they do. So they regulate them as well. Again, you as a client or as a customer or a client, you also have the right to report these people to the councils. So once you know the right, if a doctor does something wrong and you have a concern, the doctor should have a PIN. So is the nurse. You could report them to those regulators and they can look into it. Not only the organization that they work, but then also you as an individual have the right to report them and they'll look into it, you know. Yes. And we have the osteopathic council as well, which regulates. The one company, there's another. So when you look at it, it talks about all this. Then it also talks about the health and care professional council, you know, and this regulates ODPs, what we call ODPs, operating department practitioners. Now, those of you who want to become nurses, you know, just as we have theater nurses, and they do the ODPs work in line with the theater nurses, you know, but you are not a nurse, but you work more like a nurse. So they work together with nurses. So all these professionals, they fall under the Health and Care Professional Council. They regulate all clinical scientists, paramedics, and radiographies, as we know them, we see them in the hospitals, social workers in England, and speech and language therapists. They all fall under the health and not under the CQC. So the CQC does different jurisdictions, you know, but the Health and Social Care regulates the Health and Care Professional Council, ACPC. They regulates the therapists, the paramedics, you know, those working in the ambulance, they regulate. So different sets of organization, yeah. You know. Then you talk about the NMC. I'm sure many of you know about the NMC, which is they regulate nurses, midwives, especially community public health, name them, theater nurses, learning disability nurses, your mental health nurses, they all fall under nurses. So they regulate. And in recent times, you've had a lot of complaints. If you are quite current, you hear so many nurses who have been banned for various reasons. So the MSC have the right to ban. If you are being referred to as a nurse, any concerns of safeguarding, any concerns of abuse, any concerns of anything untoward, anything that is against the best practices of within the healthcare of the nursing practice. If anybody reports you, it can be your employers, it can be where you want to work, it can be your employers' clients, it can be the NHS. When they report you and they investigate and they find something wrong against or something truth about what you have been referred to, the MSC can ban you for 3 years, 4 years, even 5 years. It depends. But you can always go back and appeal. So that's what they do. They regulate. You know, they regulate. Yes. The General Pharmaceutical Council, they also regulate pharmacists and pharmacy technicians and pharmacy premises, you know. So when you say pharmacy technicians, you know, for those of you who want to pursue pharma, you know, the pharmacy technicians are like the trainees for pharmacists, you know, so you can be a trainee. And even though you're a trainee, you are still regulated within the Pharmaceutical Council. You understand? Then we talk about the Pharmaceutical Society of Ireland. So the council is more to do with England, but the Pharmaceutical Society of Northern Ireland also regulates pharmacies within the Northern Ireland. And one thing to note, which I forgot to mention, the Care Quality Commission is England, you know. Care Quality Commission is England, but we also have the Care Inspectorate, which is for Scotland. So you have to take note. Care Quality Commission regulates only for England, but there's a different commission for Scotland and Ireland. So, and the commission for Scotland, we call them Care Inspectorates. Care Inspectorate, they do the same thing, just like the Care Quality Commission, but then they handle issues and social care and all other things in relation to what Care Quality Commission does in England. They do it in Scotland. It's called Care Inspectorates. Okay, so kindly take notes. And then when you go further, another thing that I didn't mention, which is not on this handout, but I'm going to add it. We have the professional standard. If you go down, let me scroll down. And if you go down, you have 1 minute. We have I was talking about the SCPC. I said they work with the UK health regulations to ensure best practices in a variety of areas, namely HR, education, equality, and diversity. Understand? And I spoke about the care inspectorate in Scotland, you know, but there's also another regulator that is not mentioned on this handout, which I want to throw more light. In addition to that, we also have what we call a Professional Standards Authority, PSA. Okay, it's not on the handout, but something you have to take note. Now, so all of this, the MSc, General Pharmaceutical Council, all of this organization, the Northern Ireland of Social Care Council, NISCC, that regulates social care workforce in Northern Ireland. And then we have Social Care Wales, that regulates social care workforce. So you realize that there's always a different regulator for Wales and also for Scotland sometimes. And you have the Scotland Social Services Council that is responsible for registering people who work in social care services. Now, all these 10, except the Care Quality Commission, all these 10 from the Nursing Midwifery Council, General Family, they all come under a department called the Professional Standards Authority. It's an independent body that oversees 10 healthcare regulators. They review performances to ensure protecting the public and scrutinizing their decisions about people on their register are fit and proper. So what it means is that this 10, the Nursing and Midwifery Council, the General Pharmaceutical Council, the MSc, the Social Care Wales, all of these, 10 of them, the watchdog organization that also have oversight responsibility is what we call the Professional Standards Authority, PSA. So they make sure that indeed the doctors, nurses, opticians, name them, who have been registered and cleared to work under this council, you know, they make sure that they also have a responsibility over this, that whoever doctor who has been cleared indeed have been cleared and have what it takes or meets the best practices or fit for purpose. So we call them PSA, Professional Standards Authority. It's not on the handout, but you have to take notes. It's something they have to add to your knowledge. It's not on the handout, yes, you know. And when we talk about regulations and monitoring, or when we talk about regulation, it is important that we know some of the processes that they go through in achieving. Now, for nurses, every year, just like healthcare professionals, every year, if you're a healthcare, for you to get yourself abreast in new changes within the legal frameworks or within the health and social care industry, or even within the Healthcare Act, it is important that you align yourself with new qualifications and new trainings. So for the nursing background, many of you have heard what we call revalidation. You know, nurses have to do regular revalidation, and those revalidations are set up from the regulators, which is the MSc when it comes to this. Same with doctors as well. In fact, nurses and doctors tend to do similar thing in terms of the revalidation. A nurse should have updated with CPD in terms of his training, care mandatory trainings. Same with a support worker. Same with a doctor. They all have to have those trainings. It's foundational. They all have to have those trainings. It's very key, you know. So these are the regulations we're talking about. This regulators set up their own regulations that they have to meet what they mean. So the GMC, Ghana and the Medical Council also have their own regulation. Same with the opticians. Everybody will need to. So it might be a yearly basis. You need to update yourself with these trainings every now and then. You know, you need to do the care training. You have to update yourself. You are on the update service, the GBS, the DBS. The nurses have to do extra trainings, as well, clinical trainings and all that. And if you are a new nurse who are relocated to the UK and want to practice, for you to be able to meet the MSc, you have to do what we call your CBT. First off, you have to do your IELTS, you know, you have to do your IELTS exams first, and then you have to do your CBT, which is a computer-based theory, and then you have to do your practical, which is called the HOSCE. So you need to meet the MSc regulation. The same applies to doctors, the same applies to opticians, same applies to any other regulator, you know. So you need to do all this, and having done that, that is when the general and the MSc can approve of you and give you a PIN, you know, and give you a PIN to become a nurse in the UK. And if you want to work with the ACPC as well, you have to go through their processes and meet up their training, having done trainings, and then they can also give you a practice PIN to do, whether you want to be orthopedic nurse or you want to be ODP as well. Yeah. So these are things that you need to know, what we call revalidation. So the General Medical Council also set out standards that are required by doctors and practicing in the UK. They decide which doctors are qualified, the word is qualified, to work in the UK and overseas the education and training. Doctors do what we call PLABs. If you're a doctor and relocate to the UK, you cannot just work because you're a doctor from Pakistan or Asia or Ghana or Nigeria. It doesn't qualify you to become a doctor in the UK just like that. You ought to have gone through your necessary training in the UK, what the GMC have set out, and you're training the PA, or you have to do the HOSCE, which is for nurses, or OCI. You have to do all these trainings to be able to meet up to become a doctor in the UK. So these are the organizations that you have to take note. And I said that the Professional Standard Authority, they are the watchdog in ensuring that all these regulators, except the CQC, meet up what they seek to do. Okay. So to go further, what are the responsibilities of the staff structure in this health and social care organization? The staffs, their roles and responsibility. We have social services, we have the NSPC, the health visitor, the GP, which we all know about the GP in the UK. We have the probation and departments in the UK, the police, which we all know what they do, and the schools, the psychologists and all that. So it's important that we know this thing, and every agency have a key specific role. They all have a role that they are playing. For example, the social services, we all know what they do. The social services work hand in hand, and for the UK, every council has social workers. Every council has so many social workers department, so it's very, very important. In fact, most of the people that you see in care homes and supported living facilities, they work with social workers. Any patient that you see or any service user that you see in the care home, they are referred by social workers or the social services. They are the ones who ensure that the safeguarding of patients and service users meet up governmental policies. They have to make sure that people are safe from the environment or from the public. So the social workers are the ones who do referrals. They do referrals, they do referrals to make sure referral of patients and service users to care homes, to say having checked and make sure that this, wherever they are going, they are secured. So social workers will normally, if it's a care home, they will normally come there and come and assess the care home and make sure if it's the home of the patient before you are discharged from the hospital. Social workers will come to your home and make sure that your home is safe for purpose, risk assessment, everything is done before they will ensure that patients are sent to their various homes as well. So they protect. And so they can even go to court as well. If a social worker have a concern about where you stay, being a child, where you stay, or you feel that your parents are not giving the right parental safeguarding and protection, and social worker can take this on. They can go to court. They can even request that your children are taken from you. So this is what the social service, that's what they do in the UK. They do assessment, they coordinate, with the council, they coordinate with the police as well. They coordinate with the council and make sure that people are safe from vulnerable people. Let me put it that way. Vulnerable people, that's what the social service do. They act as principal point of contact for children where this child protection concern. It's not only children per se. It looks like social services are geared more towards children and young people, but not only children. Anything that poses danger or safeguarding, even for adults, social services have a role to play in that. Okay. Apia, you want to ask a question?
Yes, please. I want to know the difference between the social worker and the safeguarding worker. Are they the same?
They are the same. So let me, we don't really have safeguarding worker. Grace, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, so we don't really have a safeguarding worker, but the work of social workers is safeguarding. You understand me?
Yeah.
So we don't, there's no role that says safeguarding officer. No. In fact, a company can appoint someone to be a safeguarding. You understand? a safeguarding officer, a company within the company sector or framework. They can have their own, just as we have registered managers and nominated managers and all that. A company it can be a private company, can even be a government. They can appoint somebody who is in charge of safeguarding within the company, but we don't really have a safeguarding officer. You understand me?
Oh, okay, I understand. Because I normally hear we have a safeguard and talk to her and that kind of thing. So I thought their work is different from this the social worker.
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. So private, I'm sure, is your company a private company?
No, I'm talking about my kids' school. They have safeguarding woman there. So
exactly.
So
it's a private school, isn't it?
No.
Is it government?
It's government school.
Good. Yeah. So that's it. So a good question. So every organization within the healthcare sector, one or the other can appoint, you understand? They can appoint a safeguarding officer, just as you even have fire officer, you understand me? For various, so they can appoint a safeguarding officer or a manager for, depending on the vulnerability. God, I think they are dealing with children, isn't it?
It is.
Exactly. So anything pertaining to children, safeguarding is very, very important. However, that person that has been appointed is only appointed within the company sector, but the department that has the autonomous is the social worker. You understand me? So that's safeguarding officer. Anything that has concern within the school, he has to then inform a social worker. You understand me?
Okay.
Yes, he has to inform them. So they cannot do nothing on their own. They can only report. But the department that deals with vulnerable children and safeguarding is the social service. And within the social service, social workers are the ones. So if a school has a concern, if a safeguarding officer has a concern concerning any parent and how they treat their children, you know, normally the school will always talk to your children, you know, your children.
Yeah, they do.
Exactly.
They ask a lot of questions.
Exactly. So that's the role of the safeguarding officer. But he cannot do anything except if he has any concern, he then have to bring in a social worker. You understand me?
Oh.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So he can only gather the information from your. Sometimes they have the right to invite you, the parent, and question you. You understand me? Yes, they can question you, but sometimes you're not lucky and they feel that they have evidences. They can now go further and bring it. And once you get to a social worker, it then becomes a big issue. Because social workers, they have the right now to make a decision to even take your children as from you, you know, and go to court and can even get the police in as well. But the safeguarding officer cannot do that. You understand me?
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Any
you
more
very much.
question? Okay. So can we proceed, Grace?
Yes, please. Yes,
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I did like I mentioned, anything abuse. So know how to refer a child, a young person to a social service. So you can see, it says know when and how to refer a child or a young person to social services when they are concerned about abuse, neglect, or likelihood. So officers, it can be a neighbor. You can only, you know, every sector, children, whatever, they have safeguarding officers, you know, or whatever, but they cannot do nothing on their own. They cannot. They can only gather information and then report to the social services, who then have social workers assigned for every hospital or whatever to look into the matter. And once they have a case, they can go to court and your children can be taken far from you. They can even bring the police, or they can even bar the parents of not seeing their children and all that. And many of these instances are happening in the UK. We've had so many of these instances that's happening in the UK. So these are all safeguarding issues, very, very important. So that's what the social service. They also share information with GPs, with the police as well, and all that. You know, so share information with social service when required and being made. Attend children protection conferences, and so they do all these things. As employers, GPs responsible for their staff, they must ensure that practice nurses, practice managers, receptionists, and any other staff who they employ are giving child protection and training. Very, very important. So this is what the social service do. Do we have any other questions, please? Okay. So we're talking about continuing professional development needed for progression, for different. I did indicate in my previous submissions that nurses and doctors would have to have what we call revalidation. You know, and for many of you, I know you might understand when you say revalidation, it cuts across whether you're a support worker or carer, whether you're a doctor or whether you're a nurse. One of these things is what we call the CPD, continuing professional development. It's very important. So nurses will have to have certain, I think 15 credit units or so, you know. So the CPD is your continuous. They want to see you enhance your knowledge, and it must meet up with the regulators, what they have set up. So for a support worker, just like if you're applying to a university, you need to meet credit points of the university. For a nurse, you want to have your learning, the functional skills, maths and English. It has to have certain points. You have to have your level 3 of social care. You also have 60 points or 120 points. Altogether, UCAS will demand of you to have total number of points, whether 120 points to be able to apply to become a nurse. The same way within the healthcare sector or within the professional setup, you ought to meet certain developments and certain points. So what we call continual professional development is the process of developing professional skills and knowledge through interactive, participation-based or independent learning. And this can be in different form. For a carer, every year you need to have your care training because it expires every year. You need to have your care training, and your care training must consist certain courses. You cannot have a care training that does not involve basic life support. You cannot have a care training that does not involve confidentiality. You cannot have a care training that does not involve safeguarding adults and children. So they expect that your CPD will conform to what the regulators need. You know, just what care say. So care training. If you are new in care, you have to have what we call care certificates. If you are new in care, and care certificate has 15 models that you have to meet up. And those of you who are coming from, for our brothers and sisters who are coming from India, Pakistan, under the healthcare route or tier 2 visa, healthcare visa, one of the key things that you have to meet up is care certificates, because you have to have a care certificate. But if you're already in care for 1 year, 2 years, you don't need care certificate anymore. You need to have what we call care mandatory certificates. That is for people who are already practicing in care, and you have to, every year you have to acquire new knowledge and get new certificates. Now, if you're a mental health support worker, or if you are a mental health nurse, you also have to have what we call PMVA in addition to your mandatory training. You know, you have to have a mandatory training certificate, but you need to have a specialty, what we call preventing or managing violence and aggression. For you to be a mental health nurse and a mental practitioner or a mental support worker, you need to have all these things. That's what we call CBT. So every year, if you don't do that, no employer can give you a job, because you have, or the NHS cannot give you a job, because they have to see that you have all these CPD qualifications meeting the credit points before they can offer the job. So sometimes you can be a nurse and you might be stopped from working because your certificate has expired and you have to renew. You can be a carer and you can be stopped from working because your care management certificate has expired. And without that, no employer can proceed to giving you a job. Okay. Any question, please? Any questions? Should we proceed?
Yeah,
Hello?
proceed.
Okay. Yeah. So we're talking about, yes. So these are the two things you have to note. Continual professional development. You need to have this thing. Like you need to have your, make sure you have your training certificate in that every year. You need to have your level 2. If you're a senior support worker, you need to have at least a level 2 health and social care or a level 3 qualification in healthcare for senior support workers working in the care home. So if you observe, those of you who work in care homes, anytime there's a role within the company for a senior carer, they will ask you to bring a level 2 or level 3 health and social care. But a normal carer, a starting carer, you would always have to have your care certificate or care mandatory training. In addition to your DBS as well, which you have to be part of the update service. Not just the DBS, you need to be part of the update service. Every year you pay £13 to get those things. It's very, very important. It's very, very important. Okay. So this helps you to build your career progression, because having that will help you to build your career protection in terms of actually working for the NHS or working for a care home, you know. Yeah. So CPD is good. Anything, any opportunity that you have to, it can be a conference, it can be a normal training, it can be short courses. All those things add up into your GBS, into your CPD. You understand? It's very, very important. Yeah. So you realize that if the NHS, you have an NHS constitution that talks about the CPDs that you have to do in meeting and regulatory organizations or regulatory bodies. CPD is a good news for any NHS staff. Complete annual development reviews and create personal development. Those of you who work with the NHS, you realize that they don't joke with their CPD at all. You know, anybody with the NHS, there's regular trainings, every now and then there are regular trainings. You know, for nurses and midwives must complete a minimum of 35 hours CPD. That's what I mentioned, to comply with the MSc. While doctors must complete CPD to maintain their registration. So every organization have their own CPD. So the MSc, they have 35 hours CPD. That includes your training, your DBS, and all other ones, clinical, and all other ones. And then for doctors, you have to have regular CPD to maintain the regulations. You know, so what constitutes a CPD? Like I did mention, it can be e-learnings, it can be online trainings, it can be care trainings, it can be conferences and all that. All these things helps you in achieving this role. You understand? Training programs, different training programs, care training, degree qualification, level 2 IFA social care, level 3 qualifications, and all that. It helps you to achieve a good score, CPDs as well. And it also helps in your appraisal, because every well proper structured company, they do what we call annual appraisals or reviews. It's very important. If the company is well structured, they would have to have appraisals or reviews about your job, your duties, and your achievement. And in the reviews, it will reveal that probably you are lacking behind. And therefore, if you are lacking behind or you are not meeting the standard, you have to put you training and make sure that you can now meet up your requirement, what we call appraisals and reviews. Sometimes in some companies, your appraisals will even help you for the company to even increase your salary. You know, yes, it helps in appraisal, increase your salary, or even they probably, when you started working, you were just a normal carer, you didn't have much qualification, but along the line, 2 years, 3 years down the line, you did some trainings by yourself and they didn't even know. So it gives the appraiser chance for the employer to know all the new trainings that you've gotten, and when they get to know that, they will now position you a better, higher position than what you have now. Okay, do you guys get me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good. So these are what appraisal. So appraisal reviews helps, one, to help you for other positions that may be within the company that they don't know, that you don't know of. And then when they get to know, oh, so you've done level 5 health and social care, we didn't know, you've done level 3 internal positions. It will better inform them your qualifications now, and then they can help you to position you proper. And if you're lacking behind, probably you have not achieved a lot, it would also help them to better position you in that regard, you know, and put you in trainings that will help you to upgrade you as well. And it also helps a better salary as well. So reviews is very important, you know. Like I said, there are a range of healthcare professionals across the UK that you can, so many trainings and so many special trainings that you can do. E-learnings, yes. Online, if you go online, so many e-learning trainings that you can do. Care certificate trainings, so many trainings. We have healthier business, we have healthcare training, so many trainings that you can get online to equip yourself personally on your own. You understand? So yeah, this is what the CPD can do. And e-learnings, you can learn these things on your own as well. But for many good companies, they would personally put you on their own trainings. E-learnings, every now and then, you have to do it I think most care homes do, most NHS do. They have their own e-learning that they will register you, and you don't pay nothing, and you have to be every time, every week or every year or every month, you have to catch up, do your training, make sure that you are meeting up. Yeah. And you don't blame them, because you have to make sure that you are meeting what CQC require. Because like I told you, CQC, when they come to you, they are not only come to regulate your setup, whether it is a hospital but they also make sure that your staffs have the required documents. So these days, when they come, they have to make sure that at least your staffs have done the care trainings up to date, and they have your level 2 or level 3, their senior support worker. They check all these things. So it's very, very important that students know these things, and workers also know these things as well, and employers know these things as well. Informal learning, like I mentioned, could be your own, learning on your own, learning from your colleagues, learning from your friends and all that. You know, these are things that you need to know as well. You know, and when we talk about, especially of the name organization in the healthcare, you know, you have to look at our key points in this organization within the healthcare. We want to look at the NHS, which many of you know, yes, so NHS, and they used to have in the past quite robust system, and you have NHS in regional hospitals in most, but you say primary care, including GPs, dentists, opticians who work as independent bodies, and as well community services, including maternity and children and vaccination. So the NHS had that structure then. The medical professionals soon called the system to unify 1962, and in Opel, Minister of Health responded to 10-year plan. So these are all structures. But what happened? It wasn't the best of NHS at the time, and the setup, initial structure was not. But there must be a change, a radical change. So the 1980s concluded, despite the foundation of NHS, poor people had higher infant mortality rates and lower life expectancies. In addition to that, advanced medical science meant costs were always being pushed, which means the NHS almost had a problem with their money. We all know, we all live in the UK, or those of you who don't live in the UK, the NHS always had issue with monetary issues. You know, people stand queue at the A&E without before being attended. They don't have a lot of nurses. That's why they are giving room to be a lot of nurses abroad. You know, so every now and then the NHS don't have a lot of people to help to take care of patients. You know, so there has been problems. During Margaret Thatcher's time, the former Prime Minister, there have been 4 problems with the NHS care community care in 1980. So it is important that there's new structure, new look at it. So there will be improvements within the NHS, you know, and that brought about the Health and Social Care Act 12 to 2020. So I mentioned that we had the Act 2028, and then so these are all part of it. I spoke about how and the Act 2028, and even the NHS was not the best way because there was no person-centered care at the time, and there was a lot of problem with monitoring. So the new NHS look, which came out of the result of the Health and Social Care Act 12, divided into the NHS England as well, Department of Health, you know, which we spoke about. The government department responsible for funding and cabinet policies to do the health in UK. I think I mentioned that already in my previous submissions. The NHS England, which I mentioned that is an umbrella body that oversees the healthcare. It is independent body, which means that the Department of Health cannot interfere with their decisions. NHS England, so they are independent. You know, they cannot interfere, even though the Department of Health is the government department responsible for funding and coming up with policies to do with healthcare in the UK. NHS England is more independent. The Clinical Commission Group, which I mentioned, CCGs, they are responsible for commissioning healthcare for local areas. They are run by GPs, nurses, and consultants who assess local health needs and commission the services to meet. They are in charge of around 60% of NHS budget. Well, it means that even though the Department of Health is in charge of funding and they come up with policies as well, they have to disintegrate it down to the local authorities. You know, so like I said, they appoint, you know, you know, for local authorities. So the local authorities, they are the ones that make sure that families and vulnerable families, safeguarding, homeless, and all that, all those monies goes to them. So the commission are there. So you have commissioning for learning disabilities, you have commissioning for safeguarding, that you have so many commissions within the local authority or the councils, you know. So they seek to ensure that the needs of families and vulnerable family children are met. They seek to them. Then we have the NHS Foundation Trust. They provide the care that the CQ Commission, they provide the care. They include hospitals, ambulance, mental, social care, and primary care services. You know, the NHS Foundation Trust. They provide the care. The hospitals that we know, most of the hospitals that we know, Thameside Hospital, Stepping Hill Hospital, all the hospitals that we know in Manchester, they are the ones that provide the care. They provide the services. The commission that they are the local authorities, but the healthcare foundations that they are the hospitals, the ambulances that we know, they provide the care and the services, you know, that the commission does. Okay, then we need to know about what we call. Do we have any question? Any question at this stage? Any questions at all? Anshu, are you there? Okay.
Yes.
Good. So I don't know. I'm sure Anshu, and you are from India, right?
Yes.
So how is the setup in India like? You have a government department like that, like the NHS? You have something like that in India?
Yes.
You have?
Yeah. We have.
Okay. What's the name of it?
It's a government department.
It's a government
Social.
Amazing. And Grace, in Ghana, which department deals with all this, like the NHS?
I think it's same. Is it they said it's oh, they even have the card. Is it looks like NHS is the same as
So national health scheme.
National health scheme, yeah.
Okay.
It's the same.
Okay. My sister from Nigeria, in Nigeria, which company is in charge of that?
I think it's they have general hospital management.
You have.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we can agree that there's similar structures in our countries back home.
Yes.
Back home, yeah.
Yes.
So yeah. So with that, so you can see the structure. The Department of Health does the funding. The NHS England, which is more the delegated organization from the government, but they are autonomous. They are independent. They don't, they do things on their own. But the commissioning groups, they are the ones within the local authorities and all that. It can be nurses, GP, social workers, consultants. Within the local, when you say local authority, we're talking about the councils. So they are the ones who know the needs of families, for those who are homeless, those who have no place to sleep, those who need health care, those who need that. So they know the needs. So most of the monies are centered towards those directions and all that. And the NHS Foundation Trust, they are more to do those who give the services, the hospitals, the ambulances, the mental health, the social care. When we say social care, we're talking about social care in terms of social care, pensioner, an old person who is well, who is not well, who is sick and needs somebody a carer to take care of them, like we know what we call domiciliary care. I'm sure many of you know that carers that go from house to house, from house to house and take care of older people who cannot take out. They all fall under social care. Yes, social care. That's how it works in there. Then we need to know about what we call dissolution and how does it affect the patients and doctors. So the dissolution, there are 4 countries the UK have. It means responsibility to running NHS in this areas have been transferred from central government, Westminster. The UK government allocates block funding to each national government, but it's made up to decide how much to spend on their NHS. Some people think, however, that more regional devolution will be beneficial to the NHS. It's a project initiated by the coalition of government to develop health and social care to Manchester authorities. It's very early to tell, but the experiment should have simplified. But let me go further. It goes well. Dissolution would mean that services are more aligned with the needs of the specific region, which may have benefits to local population. I set example that in the past, we may have maybe CQC taking care of the whole of United Kingdom, or let me say Great Britain, but with that dissolution, there wouldn't have been this decentralization. Let me put it that more of a better way. So it was more centralized then, but with dilution, it helps. So now we have care inspectorate taking care of staffs in Scotland, and then we have care quality deal. So, and if you look at the previous regulator, you have Scottish social, all those. So they are dissolution gives room for those. But in the past, it was more concentrated, so it says it's more aligned with needs of the specific region, which may have benefits to local population health. But some worry that dissolution at the time of austerity will complement already complex system, which could distract from basic care provision. With any reorganization, there's a risk of redundancies and will help up to the Manchester authorities to decide whether they want to increase or decrease an amount of private sector services they commission. In the past, NHS workers have found themselves transferred to private sector, which has implications for pay. So we've had such instances where even though NHS workers are meant to work with the NHS, they have to be transferred to private sector and all that because of some of these issues and all that. So this is how dissolution works, and that's what it means. So it helps towards decentralization and making sure that we'll have benefits, entire benefits to the citizenry, and that's how it works and some of the organizations that you can look at is care homes, NHS, Bupa, GP surgery, and all that. Many of you know Bupa. Bupa is like I mean, if you know Bupa, don't you?
No.
Bupa is let me put it, it's like a private organization that owns a lot of care homes in the UK. You know, they're quite huge. They own, like we have the AC1 care homes, we have Methodist care homes. These are private organizations, but they have used some of what do you call it, care homes in the UK. You know, and then we know about the NHS and you have the GP surgery. So the solution, that's what they seek to do. You know, it's more very important that we take note of it. So people think that even more regional dissolution will be beneficial to NHS. It's a project initiated by the coalition of government to devolve health and social care to Manchester authorities. You understand me? It's very early. It's very early to tell, but the experiment could have several implications. Yeah. And he says that the 4 countries of UK now have their own NHS service. It wasn't so in the past. Am I making sense? Do you understand me? It wasn't so in the past. You know, it wasn't so. It was more centralized. So you can see that the regulators, even though many years ago we had only one regulator doing a lot of things across England or across Great Britain, but as a result of dissolution and decentralization, we have like social services, England, regulating England, doing that Scotland, there's one for Wales and all that. That's all the meaning of dissolution. And that's what you seek to achieve. You understand? So, and then some of the references that you can look into and all that, if you are references and all that, you can, all the things I've mentioned, you can check on yourself, some of the reference in there that you need to take notice of as well. And then you have psychologists. We all know what psychologists do. You know, in the UK, if you want to be a psychologist, you have to do a counseling course and level 3 counseling course in psychology to be able to be a psychologist or do a degree in now. We have what we call counselors. They also work with the NHS. You know, there's a difference between the psychologists and counseling, but they all do similar thing. There's a course for that, counseling level 3. So you said they review and gather evaluation as to how a child or young person become at risk. You know, counseling to allow a child or young person to open up to their abuse and harm. You don't know every child can open up as well. So that's what psychologists did. And there are so many roles within the NHS. So psychologists, they are also high-paid professional within the NHS as well. Yes, and we also have counselors as well who work within the NHS. And you say they recommend whether a child should have psychological treatment. Not only child as well, adult as well. Adult also go through same. Recommendation for other services that would have created a safe environment for the child or a young person. And the role of psychology is that of a professional expert who strives to maintain an unbiased, objective stance. Unbiased, the word is unbiased. So the fact that you're a psychologist doesn't mean that, but you have to be very unbiased in here. And then hospital services. You know, they need to alert to signs and symptoms of abuse and neglect, conscious of patients, carers who visit different hospitals. Conscious of parent and care, changing their version of events, injury of a child. So all this seek to do is to ensure that the psychologists or counselors, so to speak, they have things in there to ensure that when they meet a child, they can get to know more information to better inform them and guide them so that they don't go through abuse and other safeguarding issues. Then we have the pediatrics.
Now you can go through some of the others yourself, and we'll catch up in the next session.
Okay. So some of the things in there, I'm sure you can go through out yourself. There are not any key things in there. You can go through out yourself, and then we'll catch up in the next session probably tomorrow, right? So I think we are behind time now. Mental health services you can go through yourself. Educational services are there on the slides. You know, the police, the educational services in there, which we'll catch on the next time when we meet up. The police, we all know what they do. You know what they do in the UK. They work in line with the social workers as well, what we call the multi-interdimensional committee, multi-international, because they work together. Police, social service, the council, they work together. Anytime there's a safeguarding issue, they report to the police, they report to where they have to even arrest or detain the parents. So they work together. They work together. You need to take notice of that. Then NSPCC also work together with the social service as well. You know, referrals and all that. Child protection inquiry, social service, the police, and NSPC, they are voluntary organization. They all work together. What we call child protection conference. You know, so all this come together in what we call the multi-dependency organization. They were police, social workers, NSPC, they all work together to make sure that children are protected from safeguarding and adults. Very, very important. Multi-agency meeting. So once there is a concern from a safeguarding officer from hospital or from a children's school, and once they report it to social service, they also have to get the police involved if it's really a case. The police and NSPC, you have to take a council rep, everybody, and they have a meeting, what we call multi-agency meeting. They have to agree on the next line of action. How do we do? Do they have to stop the parents from seeing the children? Do they have to take the children from their parents and give to another parent? All this thing comes to play. So this is why you have to know about that. The police, the social service, the NSPCC, all of that, the education, all of that together, they come together to make a decision on this. So I think we'll have to run up today. And if you have any questions, you can ask me before we bring the meeting to an end. Fatima, I didn't hear you talking at all. Fatima, are you there?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Okay. Do you have any questions?
Nah, I don't. Thank you.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Have you got a clear understanding of everything?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you. Any other question? My sister from Nigeria, Grace, Ashu, any question?
I'm okay.
Any feedbacks, any comments, you can put it out there.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
for now.
No further question, right?
No.
Okay, that's fine. So we will continue tomorrow then. Make sure you leave your comments on the comment section.
So what time are we meeting tomorrow? Because I know it's Monday and Tuesday.
It's Monday and Tuesday, yeah.
Monday and Tuesday, yes.
Yes.
I think it's no. You have another session.
Yeah.
But Tuesday, yes. I think it should not. It should be another group. But I'll get back to you. It should be another group. So
Okay.
I'll quickly clarify that. So obviously, as of yesterday, we did the assignment discussion session for which I had sent a recording on the WhatsApp group. So that unit you have to start working on. We've started a new unit today with Daniel, and the next sessions obviously will be Monday, Tuesday next week, and they will be 11 a.m. the same time. Today's session was a bit elaborate, keeping in mind it was an introduction to the unit, and obviously this particular unit is maybe the holy grail of National Health Service, or those of you who want to work within the NHS and obviously go further to study nursing or health and social care courses in the uni. So hopefully this would have given you a lot of insight into what Daniel has obviously shared with you in the presentation. So some bits of it, there are stuff on Moodle. What I would suggest is you go in and obviously read some of the associated documents and handouts. There's a NHS structure handout in particular available, which gives you a bit of a background and history about when the NHS started in the 1950s till the introduction of the NHS Act. So you should be able to feedback, obviously, if you feel the lectures a bit too detailed, or I hope most of you enjoyed it. And it can be a bit more participative because these are things that we are aware of, surgeries, we go to hospital, sometimes we've visited the A&E, and there is lots and lots of things that you can share during the course of the discussions with Daniel as it continues this particular unit. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good stuff. So that's absolutely great. Thank you so much for joining in today. And with Daniel, we'll catch up with you next week. And that will be Monday and Tuesday to discuss learning outcome 2 and 3. And then subsequent week will be the assignment discussion session for this particular unit. So it's a small unit, although 15 credits, but there's lots to cover, a lot of reading to do, which typically I would suggest you look at some of the associated handouts on Moodle. Good stuff. Thank you so much for joining in today, and I hope this was a good, enjoyable session. We'll see you guys next week. Until then, thank you. Take care for now.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Excellent session. Maybe because it was the first one, so